Hi, now I'm going to show you why we can't use regular methods to store primitive data like integers. I've set this program up already. I have three integers, num1, num2, num3. I'm initializing them to -1 because I'm going to be asking for positive numbers. So I like initializing data to what it's not supposed to be. And so this is a method call. So first it's trying to fill num1. And after it fills num1, I'll just have a line to clarify the output. So it'll be a blank line. And then it will print what the value of num1 is after the procedure call. So here's what the procedure does. It uses a do while loop. And so this loop will keep going until the user follows directions. So as long as they keep typing in a negative value, it's going to make them do the same thing over and over and over. So they're told to enter a positive number. Num, which is the argument that comes in, is set equal to the next input, the integer. And if they don't follow directions and put in 0 or a negative value, then they're told that they did it wrong and that they have to do it again. So this will happen repeatedly until their number is greater than or equal to 1, at which point it will go back to the main method, print the blank line, and then print the value of num. So let's see what happens. And there's my console. So I'm not going to follow directions, -9. Nope, that's not a positive number. So I'll type in 0. That's not a positive number. So now I'll type in 4. And it says the number you just entered is -1. That's because with primitive data types, like integer, the way the storage works, these are actually two different storage locations. So we're obviously not, num1 is not getting filled with whatever they type in here. And so what we have to use is something called a return method. And a return method returns a value. It's like it's a calculation. So instead of this saying void, well, I'm going to comment out this whole thing so we can keep part of it. But, whoops. So I'll use the asterisk slash to do that. Okay. So as far as method headers go, we're using a return method. Public static. Instead of using void indicates there's no data returning. We put the data type of the data that's going to return. So I'm trying to get a new integer to put into num1. And so I can keep the name the same, and I can keep the parameter list the same, and I will still use my curly brackets for the body of it. And actually, I can take all of this. So far it's identical, except instead of void here, I have int. And again, an int is the number that will be sent back. And you might have noticed that I call it a return method. Return methods, by default, so whenever there's a variable type here, have to send back a value, which is why I'm getting an error here. This method must return a result of type int. And that's okay that says that. So at the end, not always at the end, but typically at the end of return methods, you need the keyword return to say what we're sending back to the main method. And so in this case, we're returning num because that's the value I've typed in that we want to keep and store into a variable. we will now probably see that I'm going to get an error because of this line. So two things are different. There's more than two probably, but the primary differences between a return method and a regular method, number one, you have to have this return statement. You have to declare what kind of data is coming back from the method. And the third way is how we call it. This is an illegal procedure call, and let's see what kind of error we get. Interesting. It's still not working. I'm actually surprised that we didn't get an error on this procedure call. But anyway, here's why it didn't work. Instead of, I guess it's illegal. Instead of saying this statement here is the equivalent. Let me create a new variable. I'm going to call it temp. Now, hopefully you know that doing this is not a valid statement. We can't just say temp. We can't just say the name of the variable, even if the variable has a value. This is not a full command. And as it's telling us, temp cannot be resolved to a type. So basically, whenever we use a variable, we either use it in a println or some kind of print statement. It's legal. We can use it in a calculation. So I could say that num3 get temp. What else could we use it? So we have it in a assignment statement. We have it in a print statement. That's kind of the only way how variables can be manipulated off the top of my head. There might be more. But so the reason this statement isn't really working is because now that it's a return method call, you have to think of it as a value. So this getNum thing, we're going to take this out now because we don't need to send anything in. In fact, we're going to have to redefine num down here. So num int num starts at -1. So we can't just say get num. I want to see if this runs this time. Interesting. Really surprised it's running. Eclipse must have something built in. But you can see that num1 still isn't getting filled. So it will run this code, but the value of the code is not being saved. I'm going to take out this temp stuff to not confuse us. So before, actually, let me keep it in. Undo. So before I said that you can print a variable. So let's see what happens if I put this out here. So enter. Okay. I'm going to put this out here. So num1 to num1, and then num is equal to getNum from that. -1. When I put in 4, it shows me that getNum is equal to 4, and then 0 is still left over from the temp thing. But look, here's the other way I use temp. And so get num's working and it has 4, but it's not being stored anywhere. It was just printed. So if I truly want num1 to get filled with the get num statement, instead of having a println, which I think I'll keep there for now, but I can say that num1 is going to be equal to get num. And so whatever gets returned from get num the first time is going to be stored into num1. So I'm going to change these print statements to say now num1 equals num. I'm going to erase the temp stuff because we're done with that. So let's run this now. Enter positive number 3. Oops. I don't know why that's happening twice, but anyway. Now num1 is equal to 3. Actually, num1 should be there. And let me duplicate this for all 3 variables. Okay, so num2 is equal to num2. Oops. 2. Num2 is get line. I need to fix my code. I forget where it is. I don't like, I think it's Shift Control F. There, I like it formatted better. Num1, num1, num1. I'm going to put more white space so I can see where num1, num2, num3 is. Okay, so num2, 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 num3, 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 num3. And num3. And I don't think I want this one. Actually, okay, run it. Enter a positive number 5. Now num1 equals 5. Enter a positive number 2. Num2 equals 2. Enter a positive number 6. Now num6 equals that. So the output's a little messy, but you can see that this return method each time returned a number which was stored in num1, num2, num3 respectively. It will be clearer if I do this out like line after each one of these. Okay. So I'll run it one more time so you can see it. Num1 starts as -1. I enter 4. Now num1 is equal to 4. I enter 7, and num2 is equal to 7. Enter 79, and num3 is equal to 79. So that's how return methods work. I'm now going to do the roots program from the assignment so you can see this in a practical program.